Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Zero Generation podcast for the dreamers who left home and are making home somewhere else. Today, I have in the studio with me someone who I've followed for years, and I'm so excited that I get to have this conversation with her, learn a little bit more about her, and hopefully see a side of her that even her audience may not know too much about. So I'll take a pause here and have her introduce herself. Welcome, Maya.
Thank you so much for having me. So, hey, everybody. My name is Maya Elious. I'm a personal branding strategist and the CEO of Built to Impact. I work with women of faith, primarily helping them get really clear on their brand message and package their expertise to build a six-figure or more business.
I love it. I love that six-figure part.
Yes, we love six figures and more.
Yeah. And I want to start with giving you your flowers, right? Like, I started following you around 2019 at a time where I felt like I had accomplished some corporate success, and I felt like purpose was like calling. And you know, I would see your post and I'm like, you know what, I feel like God just told me that, or like I feel like this occurred to me, and like Maya's driving it home. And I think that's what has you, I think, for at least for me, you were one of the first people in that space to really like push people to like be themselves. And then to see your success over the past like 5 years, you've grown so much. I just love seeing it. So congrats on everything.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it is wild seeing the growth. And just even thinking about 2019 being 5 years ago, it's like, where did the time go?
Yeah.
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 I feel like we kind of got lost in like with the pandemic.
Yes.
It's like, 2.5 years of our lives is like just gone with the wind.
Just gone. Just gone. Oh my God. It was like, yeah. So just to dive into the topic of today, right? So, this podcast is about, you know, mostly about people who are immigrants or children of immigrants or people who are making a life in a different space from, you know, where they were born or where they're from or where their parents are from. So I don't want to label you. I want you to tell me, like, what are your identities when it comes to, like, where you're from or even who you are? You know, how do you identify on that spectrum of, you know, being away from home or being at home or having parents who are not, you know, who are immigrants in one way or another?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. I think it's so funny because one, identity, like, you know, we had that, like, and I don't know, maybe it's still going on, that, like, time frame where it's like, what's your identity? What are your pronouns? And I'm like, I don't know. She, her, hers. And I love that question too, because I do think a major thing we all struggle with is identity. Like, I think it's the most important thing for us to be able to confidently answer. And I like always say, it's the number one thing that the enemy is after is our identity, because how we identify is how we show up. But I guess my identity in terms of culturally speaking, I would say, you know, African American. I would say, you know, half Liberian, half American.
I love it. So what half is Liberian? What half is American?
I'm the American. You're yeah. Both my parents are Liberian.
You know what? I love. So you're essentially saying like you're like owning the American, and I think, you know, for context, I moved here 10 years ago, so I feel much more Nigerian than anything else. Every year I creep more towards the American side. Yeah. So I was like, oh, obviously she means like, you know, like one of her parents. Right. So, you know, how has that, like, let's go back to like growing up. Like, were there, like, at what point did you ever think things are a little different in my house? We're a little different, you know, from what I see my friends or what I see on TV. And what were some of those interesting points for you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I grew up in a very strict household, and so I didn't even like chop that up to, oh, we're in a strict household because we're African or we're Liberian, right? I think I didn't even have an understanding like, oh, we're Liberian or whatever. I was able to clearly identify like, oh, we're Black, because I grew up in predominantly white schools, white neighborhoods, white churches. So the clear differentiation was that, you know, I'm Black and we're around a lot of white people. So I just thought we were strict because we're Black. And then I'm like, okay, wait, there's another level to it when people would be like, oh my gosh, like, how do you understand your parents' accents? And I'm like, what accent? And they're like, what? You don't hear it? And I'm like, no. And now, like, it took me maybe until I was like 18 to really start noticing it. But I'm like, this is just how they talk. It's completely normal.
Yeah, that's such an interesting anecdote, because like this is just your normal, and just like we're Black, we're different. So like my parents are strict because they're Black.
Yeah,
all people are Black. Like I love it, because I grew up in Nigeria, but I grew up in Ibadan, which is a different city from Lagos, where where all the life is happening and like it's quiet. I'm a PK too. My parents are pastors, but then you just think it's normal. Like we go to church Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday for a choir practice with my dad, Sunday, and then we're there all day on Sunday, and it's like, oh, this is just life. Like, you mean y'all don't go to church from 7 to 7, like on a Sunday?
Right, yeah.
So basically, like it took you a while to even clock that there's this additional layer to how people perceive you, how people perceive your parents.
Yeah.
How did their strictness like impact how you were formed? And like, because now you're doing something that is different.
Yeah.
Like there's even the thing of like, when you grow up, be a doctor or be a lawyer or be a this or be a that.
Yeah.
And then there's corporate, and then there's entrepreneurship, but you are like a creative entrepreneur charting a new type of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So and that's a very long-winded question, but I want to know, like, how did you go from like strict parents to where you are now?
Yeah, I think more so they were strict because they wanted me to be disciplined and focused. And I'm really grateful, because obviously, like, as a kid, you're like, I can't do anything. And, growing up around white people, like the white people I grew up around, was like, their parents were super chill. Like, they didn't care about anything. I'm like, they have so much freedom. And it's funny because, like, now when I watch like TV and if I watch like a teen drama or whatever, and it's primarily white kids, and I'm like, my parents would never allow that to happen, but I'm like, this actually happens in real life. Like, I've witnessed it. Yeah. So like when I'm younger, I'm thinking my parents are like so strict and all of that. But as I grew up, I realized they instilled a level of discipline in me that is what got me here. Right. And so it's interesting because I don't look at it as like, how did I become so creative when I grew up in a strict household? It's more so I understand why I was disciplined enough to create something successful because I grew up in a strict household. So I'm really grateful for the lessons. Even if some of it might have been like overboard or I didn't understand it, I can take away the positive from it.
Yes, I love that. Because it does take discipline to achieve anything. Right? Yeah. So it's like you had the framework, and then you could go do whatever you wanted with it. But how did it go down? How did it go down?
Right, because it was like technically they wanted the discipline to go into another lane. So So I think I had always like loved playing around on computers when I was younger. And I think I had like told my parents, I want to be a computer programmer, not even knowing what it meant. Why would you take my word at 10 years old and hold me to that, So, I think their vision for me was, go to a good school, get a degree, get a good government job. And for me, I was a handful for my parents very early on, even before I dropped out of college, because I partied a lot in high school.
Okay.
And so when I was 18, when I graduated high school, I was supposed to go to Penn State University. And I think I was going to go for like communications or just something like simple. And then my dad got a job in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so we ended up moving there. And then I was going to go back to Pennsylvania after the summer ended so I could go to Penn State. And so one of my friends from Pennsylvania came and visited me in Charlotte, and we were partying, and we posted the pictures on MySpace, obviously because we're dumb and we're 17 and 18 years old. So anyway, I got caught with the partying and stuff like that. And so my mom was like, there's absolutely no way I'm letting you go live in a completely different state. You're going to become an alcoholic and blah, blah, blah. Like just life. Right. Just African and dramatic. And so man, I was so devastated at that point because it's like all my friends that I went to like middle school and high school with, like they're all going to be going to, Penn State together and stuff. And so I felt embarrassed because I had to quickly enroll in a community college. Right. And so going from like, oh, my parents are proud of me, I'm going to like a popular university, to now going to community college, like I felt so devastated. Yeah. But if all of that had not happened, and thank God for his grace and that he could turn anything around despite our stupidity, is that I don't think I'm quite sure I wouldn't have become an entrepreneur and this level of success had all of that not happened, because I think I would have gone the traditional route of going to a good school, met a husband, and just done all the traditional things. And there's nothing wrong with that, of course, right? I think that's such a nice story to have, and you don't have all of these questions, whatever.
Yeah.
But I went to the community college and I had started designing custom MySpace pages when I was in high school. And I met somebody at that community college that offered me money to create custom MySpace pages. And that's what began my entrepreneurial journey. So anyway, long story short, like I became an entrepreneur. I was in the community college for a few years. I transferred to a bigger university and I struggled there because it was so big. I'm like, I'm not used to this because I started as a community college. So I struggled there. I was embarrassed again because my dad's like, hello, are you planning on graduating? And I'm like, shit, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Because they be checking your grades even in college. Like, let's see.
Absolutely. Yeah. Plus I was living with them. So they were like, I couldn't even live on campus and have fun and all of that. So yeah.
You had shown them that you were on track to be a failure. So they said, no, come sit home and
right. Yeah. And they hadn't planned for it, so, I was living in Charlotte. They eventually moved and then I moved and my uncle randomly had an extra house and I was able to do that. But all of that, I ended up dropping out of college. It was just like, let me just continue on the path of failure and see if entrepreneurship could work out for me. And thank God it did. And that was just such an interesting time frame because I was so nervous. And I knew early on that I wanted to drop out or that it wasn't working for me.
Right.
But I was just scared because I wanted to please my parents so bad. I had this addiction to wanting to please my parents. And I think that I probably dropped out 2 years after I knew that I wanted to. So that was interesting.
Yeah, so interesting. And I think people can relate to that regardless of what cultural background they come from, right? Like if you have caring parents who instill discipline and set standards for you, feeling like you deviated even 1 degree just feels like they're going to be so crushed. Like everything they worked hard for, and now I'm just deciding to do, go another path.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the story of your university because I also had a little crisis point around my university. I went to high school in Nigeria, did A-levels in South Africa, came back to Nigeria, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to the UK. I'm going to go to the US. And it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And so I went to a Nigerian university feeling like, why am I here? I'm not supposed to be here. All my classmates, from, the schools that I went to were schooling abroad. And I was just I hate my life. But that was where I came of age, where I figured out who I was and became even really proud of my Nigerian identity. Because prior to that, I'd been really sheltered. I didn't know anything beyond church and home and family, friends.
Yeah.
But I think those years are so pivotal where we feel like everything is over, nothing can come of it, but then you realize if I didn't go through this route, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be where I am today. So you started off making, doing MySpace websites, and you're doing something completely different today, but you're still an entrepreneur. And, we know the stats that, within the first 4 to 5 years, I think about 45% of entrepreneurs fail.
Yeah.
How have you sustained yourself or even made the necessary pivots to still stay in business? And how has your cultural background or your family background and your values impacted that journey?
Yeah, I love that question. I think, growing up with my parents, when I look at some of the things that they instilled in me, it was my dad instilled the discipline and my mom instilled the faith. And so it was my dad was very strict in terms of I want you to be disciplined. I want you to get good grades. His standard of excellence was just so high. And I really loved that. When I was younger, I thought, a B should be good enough. You know what I mean? And it's it's just not. And then with my mom, it's you need to listen to God. You need to have this level of faith. And I think both of the values that they were trying to instill in me has helped play such a pivotal role, even in just how I show up. I think with the discipline and how I show up, not giving up, willing to do the work, willing to work harder than anybody else in the room. But then with my mom instilling the faith, it's I know that God isn't going to fail me. Just even how I speak, how I show up, working primarily with women of faith.
Yes.
I think it just played such a huge role. And being in business now for over 10 years, it really is the grace of God. And of course, doing it's really truly a mix of faith and works, and knowing when to pivot and to not be afraid and to make scary decisions. Like dropping out of college to work for myself full time was one of the scariest decisions of my life. And then making the decision to no longer design and to tap into the coaching and education space was also very scary for me. So also just having that faith of, you need to do the scary things and prioritize what makes sense and prioritizing where you will have the biggest impact and not prioritizing people pleasing.
You've said so many nuggets that I want to draw on. I love that, at the end of the day, you talked about faith and works, which, are the two pillars. But then, so your dad was the works, show up. And then your mom was the faith. And I'm sure they have both, but they kind of chose okay, I'll champion this, you champion that. How can you lose? I really, really love that. And so, you also talk about how it's helped you just, okay, here, I need to work harder. Here, I've done my best and I need to just lean into faith and just know that things will work out. How did you decide when you got into this space to brand yourself as, focusing on women of faith and, choosing that particular path? How did you get here?
Yeah. I mean, I think the beautiful thing about branding is if you truly show up authentically, people will brand you for yourself, right? I did not come out saying I'm a coach for women of faith. I knew my skill set of personal branding, and I would talk about my faith. I would blog about it, and it became so natural. I didn't think that it was something groundbreaking. And people are like, how are you so comfortable talking about God? And I'm like, is he a secret? Why are we not talking about God? And, so people would be like, I really love working with you because you are a woman of faith and you're so open and confident, talking about God. And people would mention that. So then I included that in my messaging because I recognized that's what attracted the clients that I enjoyed working with most. So typically, when it comes to messaging and branding, you want to then start using the words that your ideal clients or the clients that you actually enjoy working with are using.
I'm learning so much. You talking about showing up as yourself. And then listening for what people are saying about you. I don't even mean to quote the Bible, but why would
why would we not?
Jesus was like, who do men say I am? It was almost tell me a sample size. I want to know. If it tallies with who I think I am, right? Yeah. And then taking that feedback and being I connect with these people. And I feel like these are my people and they're saying this about me. So this, I'm going to take on that into my brain because I'm already showing up as that. But I probably take it for granted, that it's just who I am. The other part is, being open and bold about your faith. I think it's for me, I do that too, but it's also because that's what I've always done. Isn't that what people do? But then coming to this country, in Nigeria, you pick a side, what religion you are. But then here it's you're very open. And I was like, isn't everyone this way? And of course, now having lived here for several years, I now understand, very culturally, it's not the norm. But it's just ingrained in me. I couldn't shut up if I tried. Yeah. So I love that, that's the same experience for you, even though, seemingly we had very different, growing up experiences. Mm-hmm. I think as we start to close and as we start to wrap up, I would love to just hear your vision for the future. What kind of, I know that you're very close with your family, your sister, and your nieces and nephews, so they're the next generation, right? Of who knows what they'll identify as. Right. But when you think about their lives and you think about yours, what do you hope for them to experience, and what do you hope for their journeys to be? And if you want to have kids one day, what's that world that you want them to grow up in, where they they filtered the things that came down from the parents to your generation and then to theirs?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. It's so funny thinking about my nieces and nephew because as of right now, they're the closest thing to me having children, and seeing their personalities and all of that. I think what I love seeing is them being themselves. And I wish I wish kids being themselves was something that was nurtured more instead of us constantly trying to mold them into something. Because although I am so grateful and appreciative of my parents, you know, instilling values in me, they didn't believe in me when I dropped out of college. And, you know, I am where I am now, and there's nothing can get in the way of, you know, what God has planned for us. But what would my journey have looked like had they, you know, believed in me? You know, now they believe in me because they benefit off of, you know, believing in me, which I love. And I see the results. Yeah, you know? Exactly. And I understand it because when you come to this country with a clear vision and you hear stuff about living the American dream, you want the best for your kids. So I don't fault them at all. There's no bitterness there at all. But I think with my kids, I want to see how God made them naturally and nurture that instead of trying to be their God and telling them this is what you need to be doing.
That is powerful. Yeah. That is so powerful because it's literally the train up a child. Like, what is this child already like moving towards? And then how do I guide them?
Yes. Train up a child in the way they should go, not in the way you think you want them to. Yeah.
Or like making them live your life in a slightly better, like the beta version of your own life.
Right,
you know?
right.
I love that. And I love the fact that, like, I think our generation of parents and uncles and aunts they seem super reflective and want to do a good job for the next generation. I'm just really happy for the next generation.
Same.
As we wrap up, you know, do you have anything coming up that that the audience might want to lean into or that you want to talk about?
What do I have going on? I think the most recent thing that I'm excited about is my podcast, Work Hard, Live Soft, because I do think it is a balance of who I am. Like, the work hard is definitely there, the discipline, but I see a lot of people overworking or, you know, chasing success, and they're not excited about what they have going on in their own life. So I would say my Work Hard, Live Soft podcast is what's exciting me right now. Just learning how to build a business that serves your life instead of designing your life around trying to build your business.
I saw when you put that out, and I can't wait to like lean in and listen.
Thank you
for sharing that. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Thank you for having me.
My heart is so happy to like meet you in person and to connect. Thank you, and I've taken away so much.
Yay! Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode. As always, you can find us on all podcast platforms. The videos will also be on YouTube, my personal YouTube at Dami Onwa. And you can also connect with me on my socials at Dami Onwa on all the socials available. See you next time. Thank you all.